a giant heavy-duty van on 42s is only as good as its power plant, unfortunately. So we're gonna rob the 5.9-liter Cummins and manual transmission out of my pickup truck, and hopefully we can get all this stuff to fit in this van. This is a 5.9-liter Cummins that Nick spent the last few days pulling out of that truck. There's a lot of work to get this thing out of here safely and securely, but we're now in a position where we can start to get this into the van. Diesel fuel has about 113% of the energy density of gasoline. Couple this with the fact that diesel engines are higher compression, they have turbos, they're direct injected, and you end up with a platform that is roughly 30% more fuel efficient than its gasoline burning counterpart. I'm gonna weigh this engine when we get back, but online, everything that I've ever seen over the years has said like 1,100 pounds dry. We're gonna weigh to confirm that. This truck that I'm moving it in is like 1,700 pounds. So it's a lot of weight to put in the bed. We actually added air to the tires to make sure that everything is still round with this much weight in this little truck. But this truck is so perfect for these kinds of things. And even with a 0.7 liter engine, I mean, it's still moving along just fine. I'm just gonna take it easy. Definitely don't go over bumps too fast or anything like that. And go wash this engine. There are two really big cons, in my opinion, to diesel power. One is it is very difficult to get a diesel to idle as smooth as a gas. Now, modern technology has made this a lot better, but it's still a gas V8 or a gas V10 just idles so buttery smooth. And two, diesel engines almost always weigh more than gas. Let's see, was the internet accurate? I'd say the internet's pretty accurate. They say 1,100 pounds dry, and this, I mean, we've got like clutch on it and the alternator and a couple of pumps and stuff, so it's a little bit less than people say, for sure.
We're missing a mount though, too.
Oh, that's true. Well, still. Well, usually when people do engine weights, it'll be no mounts. It would just be like, you know, long block intake, like the basics and stuff. And I mean, this is like a fully assembled engine. It's even got the freaking clutch on it. So these engines aren't quite as much as people say they are. Either way, it's a big boy. There's a reputation that gas engines make more power than diesels. And oftentimes, I mean, right out of the box, that's very true. Or with just like small mods, I could see where some people would say that's true. However, I would like to point out, we're going to be doing very little modification of this engine, and we're going to make between 400 and 500 horse and between 1,000 and 1,100 foot-pounds of torque. And that might sound like a lot, but you can look up the world record right now, and the world record was just reset by a guy with a Cummins making 4,461 horsepower.
I can't believe he blew a tire. Insane. 461. 4461, guys. New dyno record.
So diesels can be made for giant power, and it's not uncommon to see 1,000 horsepower diesels. I think the biggest reason that we don't see very many built diesels being raced, especially in the off-road world here in the US, is just the simple fact that they weigh so much. So we need to treat this thing very cautiously. We don't want it to fall off an engine stand because it can do some serious damage to us or the things around it. And we're gonna take this slow. We're gonna make sure we're building very strong mounts so this thing doesn't yard itself out of the bottom of our van, and make sure that we have the infrastructure to withstand something that makes over 1,000 foot-pounds of torque and weighs over 1,000 pounds. Let's see where the engine is in position to the doghouse and whatnot. It's not too bad. We'll take a look at the front here in a minute, but here's what I'm looking at here. We've got our transmission. By the time the transmission gets bolted in, we've got 16 inches roughly from the front of our transmission to where the shifter is going to come through the floor. And then we're going to heat the shifter up and manipulate it where we need it. If we need it forward a little bit more or over, which I definitely plan on making it over to be like close to my hand. So 16 inches right here is where I think we're going to end up having to put our hole in the floor to be able to get the transmission in. As you can see, it's not actually all that bad. You know, it's tight in some areas, but it's honestly, there's certain things that are going to be easier to work on in this application than they would be in the Ram. Like these rear couple of valves are super hard to reach in the Ram, whereas now that we have a doghouse, like all this stuff on the back of the engine is going to be way easy to reach, which I like a lot. So with this radiator, which I think both radiator options are going to be big enough, I measured, we have 3.5 inches between the front. It's more than it looks. It's 3.5 inches between the front outmost part of the motor and the most rearward part of the radiator. So it should be just enough space for us to fit like the biggest, craziest electric fans that I can buy. I'm still debating on how to do all this. We've got a radiator from the 6-liter diesel van. I don't know how that fits in here. This is just the factory one that came with this van, and it's huge. It seems way bigger than you'd need in a V8. I think that this radiator would probably cool our Cummins just fine. And if we need to add a cooler or something, no big whoop. So if we use the stuff that we got out of the van, we put the AC condenser would be right here. Because of that new front end, if you saw the previous episodes, you saw that new front end that comes out here. We have a giant void because the newer front ends and the Fords have this huge void up here. So that would give us enough space to mount a custom intercooler, which I wouldn't mind. We have the 6-liter intercooler. I don't know where that's supposed to fit, but right now, for what we're trying to do, which is just locate the engine, I'm pretty confident that this is gonna work. And originally I thought we were gonna have to make, like we're gonna have to cut this out, this big factory crossmember. But in this location, it clears it. It's just kind of a pain. We're gonna have to modify this, no matter what, we're gonna have to modify this in order to clear a front axle. But right now, it looks like we just have to worry about the axle, and we might be able to get away with the clearance in terms of engine placement.
We're still early enough in this build that I'm doing a lot of juggling still. So one moment I'm test fitting a transmission, getting everything set where it needs to be. The next moment we're taking this truck carcass, we're winching it up on the trailer to get out of the way so we can use the forklift to get things in and out of the front door of the shop. And speaking of getting things in and out of the front door, we're also auditioning a bunch of little parts and pieces. Lots of things are starting to show up because we've been ordering them for the last few weeks, and we need to figure out what radiator package is going to work. We need to figure out what kind of electronics things are we going to use to power this. Where are we going to put batteries? Because I want to put a bunch of really big deep cycle batteries. So if it looks like we're kind of jumping around from task to task, that's absolutely what the experience is right now, because we're still in the planning stages. There's certain things we can't order until we can verify that something fits. Like this engine and transmission. I didn't want to order a rebuilt transmission or start rebuilding this engine until I'm 100% confident that these are actually going to work in the van. Then once we'd reach that milestone, I can start to order all the parts we need, all the performance stuff we need. So when it comes time to finally install this stuff for the last time, we're going to get the performance that we want out of this rig. Transmission mount is going to be out of 2x4 by 3/16 tubing, and I'm actually going to make 2 of them. So we're going to do one for the transmission and one for the transfer case setup, because we are going to have a lot of torque, we're going to have a lot of twisting force, and I want to make sure that we're not only relying on 2 engine mounts and 1 center mounted transmission mount in order to keep this whole thing from twisting around. Because when we're in first gear and we're crawling up and over obstacles and we're throttling in and out, it is going to make this drivetrain twist like crazy. So for that reason, we're going to have a 3rd mount that's going to go offset for the transfer case, and this should help reduce that amount of twist throughout the entire drivetrain package. But as you can see, I'm basically just measuring the frame width, transferring that over to my table, and then laying out and building everything based on those basic dimensions. Then whenever I go back to the frame, I basically can just put 2 plates mounted to the bottom of the frame, tack it all together, and then finish weld everything here at the table. Protect the studs out of the mount itself, I've recessed them into this cross member, and then I decided to protect the holes that allow access to that mount as well. and I just put 2 pieces of 2-inch tube. I welded it in there so that rocks aren't gonna grab these 2-inch holes that I have for a socket and just open them up. So this makes it so much more sturdy in there and gives me the protection I need to confidently climb up and over obstacles. I just added this front cross member here because we need to pull this motor out and cut that cross member. But I wanted to get a couple other cross members in here before we cut that factory one out. Check this one out. The transmission is currently being held up by our rear cross member. As you can see, maybe you can't see, I've got the holes there to protect the mount because I've done mounts like this in the past. And the way they always come from the factory is the bolt head, or the stud head rather, is like exposed. And so that's why I decided to sink this in here like this. It's 3/16, not super heavy duty or anything, but plenty heavy duty for what we're gonna do. And because the van's so big and has so much clearance, we actually still have a boatload of clearance underneath this cross member. So we should be okay. Once we build the transfer case setup, back here we're gonna add another one of those, and then I'll probably do a skid plate that'll bolt on between the two, and that's just gonna add some structure in between this forward and hind mount cross member. While I've been working through and solving little drivetrain fitment problems, Nick has been working on a bunch of stuff behind the scenes, and one of those things has been like auditioning different parts that we want to add to some of our vehicles. And one of those parts has been Wolfbox. We are putting this on the Toyota Tacoma. Well, Nick already put it on the Toyota Tacoma, and we're gonna put it in this van. And I gotta tell you, I have been looking at dash cams on and off for like a year and a half, and when I saw this system, it made so much more sense than everything else that I've seen, because not only is this going to be able to be a dash cam, but this gives me full visibility behind me while I drive and makes it to where I have a rear view mirror again. And when you have vehicles like Toyota Tacomas or even this E-Series van that have small side mirrors and no rear view mirror, being able to mount a camera and pick up a rear view mirror is extremely valuable in my opinion. Do you remember last year whenever I hit that elk and destroyed my Tacoma? Want to see something crazy? That sucks. That sent me down this rabbit hole that is dash cameras. I, for one, am not a very techie guy. And I didn't want something that's suction cupped to my windshield that has a bunch of cables going everywhere. And that's where the Wolfbox stood out to me in a huge way. Oh, my mom's calling. Sorry, Mom, I'll call you back. This unit specifically, this has 3 camera inputs, so that's perfect for the van, where we're gonna do a front camera on the grill. We're gonna do the rear-facing camera just so I can see what's behind me as I'm driving. And then it has, of course, out of the windshield. So what I like about this is it looks so factory. It doesn't stand out at all. There's not a bunch of cables hanging down, nothing like that. And I have a way better view than this rear view mirror would have had stock. I mean, not only can I not see out of the back window because of my tent, but then of course all my molly panels, all that. The rear view mirror was doing nothing. And now it's an extra tool. It's not only giving me the ability to see behind me and open up that functionality, but it's also recording what's going on in front of me and making it to where if I ever have an incident, like just a normal car crash or hit the elk again, or I hope I don't hit an elk again, then I have all of that recorded, and I think that there's a lot of value in that. I really don't want this to come across like a commercial or something like that. I only promote products that I believe in. I think there is a ton of value in here for overlanders, for people who tow. There's a ton of value for people like me that are just, you know, I'm building a van and then I have a blocked view out of my rear window. And what's really cool is that you can actually turn it off and it just turns into a normal mirror again, and I can see what my kids are doing in the back seat, and then boom, turn it back on, and I have a very high quality rear camera view again. And if you are interested in one of these, I will have affiliate links in this video. So if you want to support the channel, you can go through our affiliate link and pick one of these up. The different little bits of gear, or if you're from overseas, the little bits of kit that we put into these off-road trucks, I think it's valuable for us to share it with each other as a community. And so I'm going to be showing you every step of the way to build super strong axles that can handle this amount of power and this amount of weight. But I also want to share some of the smaller nuances, like the types of batteries I'm going to put in here to power this whole thing. I mean, even an outside shower or this Wolfbox reverse camera. I think that all of these little bits of gear change the way that you interact with whatever it is that you're building. So I plan on sharing multiple plans and testing a few things that we're going to just build out here in the shop that you can't really buy, but something you can build yourself, and share with you what the result is of how I'm going to package this van together. These engine mounts need to be crazy strong, so we're going to build these out of 1/4 inch plate, and right now it's just going to be 2 tabs, but once we pull the engine, we're going to build a bunch of structure around them to really anchor them into this frame and to spread the load away from just the 2 welds that are right next to the tabs. If you look at the factory engine mounts, it is shocking how thin they are, and I mean these mounts have 327,000 miles on them, so they did last even though they're only 1/8 inch, but I still plan on building everything at 1/4. I want to make it to where there's no way these things are going to fail, because a failure of that level is, we're talking about something as catastrophic as it could possibly be off-road. It's official. This is going in there. We were able to make all the clearances work all the way through. We've got a shifter drilled and set in there. It's a big moment. Now, we're not out of the woods yet, as the saying goes. There's no place for a clutch pedal, which is a big problem. So that is something else we're gonna have to cut a bunch of sheet metal out of the way and actually make floor space for a clutch pedal. But the hard part, the part that I was not sure about, can we fit such a long, heavy motor in here with a 5-speed manual? And dimensionally, it's all gonna work. I need to get out of the shop, so I'm currently on my way into the mountains with some friends, but next week we are going to finish out the suspension design. We are going to probably tear down this engine and inspect everything, make sure there's no cracks in between the valves of this head. So if you're into learning about engine work or continuing to learn about suspension design and seeing what we come up with for the rear, then we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.